Welcome to Games from Folktales for an extra episode where I use the last 3 minutes in my monthly podcasting plan to give you some idea of what will be going on in 2018. This is an extra episode. You will get your normal episode this week. The Ars Magica community often does a writing challenge during November. During last November, I burned up a lot of the Cornish material that I'd been working on for this podcast. My current plan is to record and distribute that material as 2 bonus episodes per month until May or June. We're going to be finishing the Lord Dunsany stories in the early part of this year and then switching across to lengthy stories by M.R. James. The running sheet looks like this at the moment. In January, sitting on Mallington Moor. On the 11th, stories I've tried to write, which is inspired by M.R. James but isn't based on his short story of the same name. Basically, it's plot hooks that I've never been able to develop as anything more than a micro-episode. Instead, I'm gluing all the micro-episodes together and putting them out as one. On the 18th, The Last Mile Problem and House McCurray, which is a modern concern in communications and logistics. Then a bonus episode, Cornwall, Customs of Ancient Days. On the 25th, one of my favourite Saki stories, Shrendi Vashtar. I'd like you to concentrate on whether Shrendi Vashtar is the weakest demon of the class of false gods that we've ever seen, or whether he's a sort of household fairy spirit. And then on the 25th, a brief digression into Legends of King Arthur in Cornwall. Before I put that in the Gazetteer, I'm going to need to flesh that one out quite substantially. In February, The Long Porter's Tale by Lord Dunsany. On the 9th, Our Casting Tools for House Verditus, Simply Placebos. On the 16th, we have the 100th episode for the podcast. The 100th episode is a poem. It's being worked into the Cornish material to explain why Cornwall is the place where the corruption of House Tytalis started. Consider the poem an invocation of the infernal saint of sorrow. The poem is Dolores Notre Dame de Seps de Dolores by Swinburne. On the 16th, Mundane Power in Cornwall. On the 23rd, a checklist for designing festivals for your covenant, and on the 23rd, Witches in Cornwall. That contains some material on a sorcerer called Lord Pengerswick, who's one of my favourites. In May, Lord Dunsey's The Exiles Club. On the 8th, the Omphalos Hypothesis and its effect on Creo magic. And then we start to hit some of the unwritten episodes. So that's what's coming up. As a reminder, if you could rate and review this podcast on iTunes, it would be particularly useful. Also, Patreon's been doing strange things with the way the financial side of the podcast works. So previously I've said the podcast will only continue while its hosting fees are covered by Patreons. I may have to rethink that this year depending on how much the changes in Patreon's fee structure affect sponsors. Thank you to all the sponsors, by the way. We wouldn't be coming up on the 100th episode without you. Just a reminder, you will be getting your usual episode this week.